welcome to the Warrior Academy podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I wish we were recording the last hour because we already had a great chat.
Yes.
And you've got such a depth of knowledge when it comes to parenting and relationships and so on. And so you discussed with me the 7 myths of parenting. And I'd love for us to dive into the 7 myths of parenting in this episode. Before we do, just to give everyone a very brief introduction to who you are and what you do.
So I live in Dubai for the past 26 years. It's going to be this September. So I love Dubai. I'm a psychologist as a profession. I'm a psychotherapist as well. I coach parents and I coach couples to learn more about themselves and to learn more about the psychology facts of relationships and the mind and the psychology around, their lives and everything that they deal with in terms of the mind. Mm-hmm.
Why do you do what you do?
Well, I love my work. I love understanding the mind. And I also love my job because that helps me to understand myself and in relation to how I feel and how I behave to become the best version of myself for my kids. So I'm a mother, as I was telling you, I'm a single mom of 3 boys. And psychology has helped me a lot to be able to understand my kids better. So both professions as a psychotherapist and a parenting coach helps me a lot in my daily life.
Your kids now are...
So my kids I got a big one, 19-year-old,
Yep.
So he's not that boy per se. I got a 13 teen and a 9-year-old. Yeah.
Awesome stuff. So quite a big a mix there of different ages,
Yes.
all with different unique challenges I bet right now as well.
Yes, indeed. I mean, I wasn't planning to, if I have to be transparent, I wasn't planning to have 3. I had 1 and then I thought that's it. But, the second came and he was welcome. And then I thought, okay, why not? One last one, then let's have one more. So
I'm in that position right now. Why not?
There you go. So there I am.
Next year, why not?
I was so naive at that time thinking that I got this. Yeah, well, it took me a lot of studies. It took me a lot of work on myself. And as I was telling you in our conversation before the recording, they are the ones that basically forced me to learn about psychology and forced me in the sense that I wanted to be the best version for them so that I can be, a good role model for them.
You mentioned you were a single mum.
Yes.
Was that always the case, or is that for the first 2 children, or?
Well, no, it's recently,
Okay.
just a couple of years back, that I decided to end my marriage, and I have a beautiful, decent relationship with my ex-husband. We do a really nice parenting together, but it was something that challenged me. Relationship is something that we should also learn about, the psychology behind that. But I think my relationship was initially the first catalyst of me going into psychology. There were many elements of my relationship that were not fulfilling to me. And I was wondering why. Why am I not happy? I mean, I have a good career. I am married. I have 3 kids. Why am I still not happy? And in core, I realized that I wasn't authentic. I wasn't really happy. I had everything, but I wasn't happy. So I really had to go into understanding myself, my beliefs, my attachment style to my husband, the parenting in itself. Why was it so, for me, difficult to be a mother, to be with my kids? So many elements that I never really reflect, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
So those questions make me to go into psychology. I started to take therapy. It was eye-opening for me when I went to therapy. And then I thought, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to educate people in psychology. I want to educate people in understanding themselves better so that they don't get stuck in this, in these relationships where maybe they're not happy, but they stay because, society, because of the myths about divorce and all these different aspects that we are conditioned to believe. And so, I went to therapy. I learned about relationships, psychology. I became a psychologist, and everything changed then. I started to honor myself more. I became more authentic. I started to learn about boundaries and personality traits, the way we operate, the ego, everything that relates to therapy. And it all made sense. And I start using those tools to become a better parent and a better human being.
Do you think a lot of the challenges that parents have, that they label as parent challenges, are actually relationship challenges?
I think not everything, but the major challenges in relationships are that we go into relationships falling in love with a fantasy. We fall in love with a fantasy. So when we meet somebody, we're meeting the facade of the relationship. When we meet someone, they are in the best behaviors. We all are in our best behaviors. But what we don't see is that behind that facade of this amazing, funny, handsome, or whatever the qualities of that person, there is also some limiting beliefs, childhood traumas, attachment styles, and so many things we don't see. So we fall in love with what we make in our heads to believe about the relationship. And then when the relationship starts to become serious, and when you start living with that person, you realize, oh my God, I don't like this of this person, or I don't like this. And why is he not making me happy? Or why is she not making me happy? You see? So this is when we start to uncover the fantasies.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I see. I'm not happy.
And yet we tend to blame the other person.
Exactly.
It's their fault, right?
Exactly. We give them the responsibility of our own happiness. I was there, certainly. Guilt. And so, yes, that's what's happening in relationships. So when you are in the relationship and you do not take ownership of your role as a contributor to the quantum space between the couple, you have to take responsibility. The relationship is like a plant, right? You nurture that plant. You put empathy, compassion, you put the time, the quality time, you put the embrace into the other person to help them to achieve their goals and so on. Then that is the relationship. But we don't see it as that. We don't learn this. We think relationship is like, oh, I like you, you like me, let's get married, and I love you. But what about the other elements? How do we see the relationship in 3 years? Do you want to have children? And if so, how many?
So if you're in that situation where you're forming a relationship for the first time with someone, I guess it's asking the right questions and finding out the right information so that you're not following down this route of fantasy.
Absolutely.
And keeping that perspective. And is it right to look for imperfections?
It's good that you are aware of the imperfections of the other person, because we are all imperfect anyway. We all have flaws, and that's the reality, and that's okay to a certain extent. The question now in couples should be, am I willing to accept this person with his flaws?
Yeah.
Is it sustainable for me that this kind of flaws, I'm going to live with it for the rest of my life? Or am I actually also taking the responsibility to help the other person to grow or evolve from these flaws, if they are necessary to change? You know what I mean? So these are the questions that you need to ask yourself, you know?
I feel like that honesty and transparency is so important from both sides, isn't it? Because also if you are not being honest with who you are, then you're kind of setting yourself up for a relationship that's flawed.
Yes.
Because ultimately, a year down the line, you know, if you behave in a certain way and the year down the line that changes, you're both going to be unhappy in some way. Whereas if you are upfront and honest with who you are, what you want to do, the things you enjoy, things you don't enjoy, and you've got that transparency and authenticity, you're better off investing your time in a relationship where that's like that up front, rather than finding out later on that you've wasted your time, right?
Yes, absolutely. You said something very eloquent. Authenticity is a necessity of a human. We cannot live not being authentic. We might survive, true. You will survive, but you will be in core, you have resentment, you have, you know, anger, frustration, because if you cannot be you, that will create resentment. In fact, there are four things that are very important for any human being. Without these four things, we can't survive. One is authenticity, as you said. The other one is the sense of attachment to someone. Yes, so attachment is what makes us feel that someone sees us, someone hurt us, someone loved us, someone got our back, you see. That attachment in the childhood experience are the parents, the two most important people, mom and dad. They are our first attachments, yeah? So in an adult, authenticity attachment from another human being that loves you, cares for you, is there when you need it. The third element that is really important is, of course, food. Yes, we cannot survive without food for our physical body. And last but not least is sleep. Yes, we need to sleep. It's part of the necessity of our body to recharge. So sleep, food, authenticity, and attachment are necessity of any human.
It's amazing how authenticity is up there with those other three, right? Because people don't necessarily think that.
Can you
I've met
that?
so many people who aren't authentic.
I know.
And it's like, it's such a vital aspect for them to feel at peace, you know? And you can imagine the friction in someone's life if they're doing something they don't like. And I find that if you throw yourself into a career that's not authentically something you love doing, you spend your time and your days, and you know, ultimately how we spend our days is how we spend our lives, right? Kind of resenting your own life.
Yes.
And I think that even if it means going down a career path which you earn less doing, or you know, whatever it is, if it's truly closer to your values and you're authentically doing something you want to do and you enjoy, you're going to bring more fulfillment into your life, more happiness and joy into your life, and less resentment. I can completely understand why some people would feel that friction.
You know, authenticity is a physiological need. It's even somatically important. Soma means body, so it's somatically important because authenticity is the most divine gift for a human being. And it all starts in the childhood experience. And I know I'm going to always take you in this interconnection of relationships with the childhood experience, because it's in the childhood experience where we learn about authenticity, and we are born being authentic. It's just matter of fact that if our parents allow the authenticity to be unfolded, you will be who you are meant to be. But if you have parents that, not because they don't love you, but because they are worried of who you will become, and they are too enmeshed with the parenting experience, meaning that they are always constantly overprotecting you, telling you what to do. Again, the intentions are good. They can be good. Yes, they want to shape you. They want to tell you what to do because they are scared that if you fail, you're going to suffer. But it's actually their suffering because they are actually mirroring their own fears into you. So that authenticity at times is so fragile in a child because the child wants nothing more but the validation and attention of a parent. Yeah. So at times they will adapt from that authenticity.
Something you and I spoke about before we started today was you asked me some questions about parenting and my parenting style and my approach to parenting. And I've only got a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old right now. There's one on the way. By the time this podcast is out, actually, I will have 3. My response to that was, I feel like parenting is this balance between protection and empowerment. And one of the things I said to you was, it's basically this masculine and feminine energy, kind of yin yang, always at play, where the feminine energy is, I want to look after you, I want to protect you, look at me. And the masculine energy is, look out there, I need to get you ready for the world out there. Yes. Don't look at me, off you go. And so one of the things I really liked that you just said was that based on our own experiences, we can overprotect our own kids. And I feel like parents who didn't have, if you grew up and your parents were really pushing you quite hard, and they were moving too much towards the empowerment, right? Yeah. We need to empower them. Life is tough. We need to get them ready for life. And they missed out on some of the care, and they didn't quite get that balance. I feel like as a parent, with your own kids, you tend to lean and over-focus on the protection side. Yes. And so it's like, if you push too hard on the protection side, your life's been so tough on me because I've been overprotected, therefore, I need to make sure my kids have more empowerment. And so if we're too far in one direction, we then swing back in the other direction. And so for me, it's like constantly being aware of this balance between the two. I don't want to overprotect my kids and then, then they're not ready for the world, but I don't want to over-empower them or focus too much on that so they feel distance from me, or they feel like I was pushing them too hard, or they missed out on their childhood, or whatever it is. So being aware of it and then trying to find that balance, right?
Absolutely. You said it beautifully. I mean, more eloquent than this, it is this. Is having that balance between you having that feminine energy of protection and nurture and giving them the tools as a man, masculine energy, to be safe, to be protected, to know how to react to certain situations. That's the balance. And you said it again, the awareness of your internal struggles, your internal quote unquote mess. If you have fears, if you are scared of, oh my God, am I doing the right thing? Oh my God, I'm not doing enough. You see, that's the constant self-work. That's what I was telling you. For me, it took me to be a mother of 3 kids and having an amazing job, and yet asking my question, why am I not feeling happy? Like, what's going on with me, you know? And it took me into a journey of discovering what was happening inside of me.
You're enough. You've got enough. You don't need any more.
Yes, because if I fear and I'm not conscious of it, I will project that fear into my kids.
Yeah, it's so true.
Right?
It's for me, a very, very, you know, blatant explanation of that would be if you are terrified of dogs, right, as a parent. And I see this sometimes with parents. Kids have no reason to be scared of dogs.
True.
I walk my dogs along the street and a child would be scared of the dog. And I look at the mum who's walking with the child and they are petrified of the dog themselves. And it's like this energy which comes from the parent.
Absolutely.
And so because of the parent being scared of the dog from whatever experiences they had, and it could be because their parents are scared of the dog and their parents are as well, therefore the child is.
100%.
And it's the same with everything in life, right? It's like, it's not about the dog.
Yeah.
It's about that projection of fear, of anxiety, of pressure, of whatever it is.
Yeah.
Or even of ambition.
100%. So this is the key to understanding psychology for children. They don't learn by the words you tell them. They learn by the shadow behavior, by following your lead. And you remember we were talking before the recording about discipline. This is where the discipline comes, yes? The discipline word comes from that word, Latin word, disciple. The followers, they follow you. Children will follow you if they see that what you are preaching, you do it yourself. So many times I have parents as clients that come for a conscious parenting coaching. Yeah, they want to become conscious parents. And they would say, you know what, I'm so triggered by my children. They never listen. I tell them to read and I tell them to don't be on the iPad, don't be on the phone, which is now the biggest enemy. Yeah, we demonize the digital world, but yet parents don't mirror that behavior because they are in the true. They're scrolling
kids
on
copy
the
what we do,
phone.
not what we say.
Exactly.
It's like don't go on your phone so much.
Yes, and they're like, read books. You should be reading books. Have you stopped and read a book with your child?
No, and I'm, as a parent, I'm completely at fault of both those things as well. All my work's on my phone.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I run this entire business and the charity pretty much on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
So my kids see that, right?
Yeah.
When we eat together, we put them away. When we in the evening, if we're watching a movie or we're reading a book and they're away and all this sort of stuff, we try to be. But it's one of those things where I think as a parent, you've got to be realistic. Not punish yourself for it, but just be aware. Spot yourself in the moment, right?
Yeah.
A bit like meditation. You spot your mind drifting off and you bring it back onto thinking about your breathing.
Yeah.
And it's the same way of not being present when you're around your kids or doing the things that you shouldn't be doing, like or being on your phone when you should be listening to them, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Not judging yourself and making yourself feel bad, but just bringing it back.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's to accept that we, the parents, are the role models of the children. They come to this world with this beautiful brain, raw brain, all reptilian brain, that is already divine. That child brain is divine. There is nothing that you can teach that child.
Yeah.
They come to teach you things. They come to teach you things, which what we were talking
When
about
the student
before.
is ready, the master will appear, yeah.
There you go. So they come to teach you. They are already divine, but that brain needs software. Like a brand new laptop needs Microsoft Office to operate with Excel, Word, and Microsoft PowerPoint.
Yeah.
The brain,
bit of antivirus in there as well.
Exactly. There you go. And so the brain of the child needs that software of knowing how to respond to life. Life is painful. It's inevitable. Yes, there are challenges in life. Life is sometimes a lot of discomfort, disappointments, ups and downs, and the children needs the software to respond to life. Now, who gives them that software? Us, parents, you know. And how do we give that software? Not by words.
Not by talking, by copying what you do.
Mirroring. There you go, mirroring. Yeah. They'll mirror you. If you shout, they will shout. If you swear, they will swear. Yeah. You know, so you gotta be very careful now who you want to be for them, because they're learning. You are so powerful as a parent. You are. Yeah. Your words are powerful. Your behaviors are powerful.
I think you asked me before, what are the things that I've learned the most as a parent? And one of them was, as we discussed, presence. The other one was patience. Yeah. One of the other things I would say is the impact of your actions or non-actions, right? So for me, it's like the way I speak to my wife is exactly how my son will expect to speak to his wife. Yes. Or how I speak to my wife or treat my wife is how my daughter would expect to be treated by her partner. Yes. And so, you know, wife, husband, whatever it is. And so for me, it's being acutely aware of the fact that in that moment, if I have a disagreement with my wife, which is rare, but if we argue, whatever, and the kids would see that, it's so important that it's done in a compassionate and caring way with no raising of a voice. And do you know what I mean? It's like, it's so important that if the kids do see you argue, whatever it is, you find a way of making up and doing that in front of them, because I think they need to see that, right? It's normal to disagree with your partner, but it's also really important to kind of normalize that coming back together again creating that kind of safe, supportive environment at home is something they will mirror and have in their own relationships going out there.
100%. You know? You just said 2 months of therapy in a sentence. That's exactly what happens with us as adults. We learned about relationships in the first relationship we have in our life, which is with who? Our parents. Yeah. There is the role model of how we're going to continue and mirror what I saw in my childhood experience with mom and dad, the way they spoke to each other, the way they show love to each other, the way they show respect to each other. That's the way I'm going to do when I grow up. That's the way I'm going to treat my wife. That's the way I'm going to allow my husband to treat me. Not only that, the kind of the person I'm going to attract is going to be with the traits of my mom and dad.
Yeah, totally.
Because that's what I learned about love. Love is what we learned from what we receive in the childhood experience.
You're painting a picture of the aspirational partner.
Yes.
So it's like, if my daughter is to have a husband when she grows up, she will look for similar traits that she saw in me, because I was her first male role model. Right?
You are the imprint of the role model of her potential masculine energy. Yeah. You are the father, the role model. She's going to look for someone like you, unconsciously, by the way. It's an unconscious behavior. Yeah. So you'll be attracted and drawn to that kind of a man that has the personality traits of my dad.
And what a responsibility that is.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like, I've never been through divorce, but I imagine that is a difficult thing to go through. And even in that situation, there's this immense responsibility to still think 10, 20 years ahead, that whatever they see in that moment, it's going to be imprinted in some way.
Yes.
And they're going to be looking for partners in that regard.
Yes, yes.
And I imagine that's very challenging.
It is, and that's why we are having this very podcast on understanding what are the myths around parenting and demystify these myths, because it is a very important stage of our lives. Look how many interesting and important topics we are putting on table about childhood experience, how much of imprint as humans we get it there, right? Yeah. The very thing that we all know in psychology, nature versus nurture, right? It is there where we build our personality traits and the way we will respond towards life. So we might as well understand parenting, understand what it takes to bring children into this world, because you bring them and you put the software, and then that software is going to be applied as they grow in the adulthood. Yeah. Yeah, if that makes
definitely.
sense.
It's actually worth studying parenting, even if you're not a
Yes.
parent, because you'll learn a lot about your childhood and yourself
Yes.
in the process. Let's get into these myths. I'm really excited
All
to
right.
learn about them. So,
Absolutely.
seven core myths
Yes.
about parenting.
Yes, so let's start with myth number 1. So parenting is about the child, okay? This is what people think. Oh, you're gonna be a mother? Okay, so yes, you should do this with the child, you should tell him to do that, all this about the child. No, parenting is not about the child. Now we are coming to understand that in order for the child to be the best version of themselves, they're already born with those qualities. Parenting is about you, the parent.
Yeah.
So let's change this paradigm of looking the parenting to the child, what can we do for the child, to shift it to you. Let's put the lenses to yourself and say, okay, what do I need to work on myself
Yeah.
so that my child gets this blueprint of being a good human, honest human, loyal human, respectful human, empathetic human. So what can I work on myself for role modeling this to him
Yeah.
or her, see?
If you're becoming a parent, it's time to double down on self-development.
Exactly.
You've got to develop yourself before they come out, because you're straight into it as soon as they're there, right?
100%. So parenting is not about the child. Parenting is about the parent. Is learning to be, again, the best version of yourself with compassion as well. I have to emphasize this because many of the parents, again, that comes to see me, they want to become the perfect parents. No, there is no such thing.
Yeah.
You can never really be a perfect parent, and children don't need you to be perfect. To the
I
contrary.
think that's really key. That
Yes.
children don't need you to be,
They
because there's so much
don't.
pressure on parents, isn't there?
Yes.
I should be this, I should be really good at this straight
Yes.
away, and I'm expected to be great, and I'm being judged all the time by the neighbors and other people. Am I a good enough parent? And
Yes, yes.
do you know what I mean? And it's
Absolutely.
like, your kids don't need that. No one's ever been that.
Nope. And they don't need you. What they need from you is to see you
Yeah.
happy, to see you fulfilled, to see you tolerant, to see you with a lot of connection and joy and joyfulness
Yeah.
and playfulness. That's what they need from you.
Here's a really good question. They need to see all those positive things. But a part of me thinks at a certain age, once they've gone past that protection stage, right? Because I feel like children go through phases as they
Yes.
grow up where
Absolutely.
they need protection and they don't need to see any negativity in the world. They just need love and care and protection.
Yeah.
But then they've got to get to grips with the reality of the world and imperfection and what's actually out there, which actually starts at home with your imperfections.
Yeah.
And children seeing that, seeing you go through something difficult, and you're not hiding it from them. And so
Yeah.
I guess the question is, as a parent, how do you respond if you want to teach your child and you want them to understand that you're going through something difficult, and for them to learn how to overcome that? What's the best way of doing that? Because
Yeah.
I feel like it's really important to show that, but more important to show how you overcome it. So
Yeah.
we're going to go through something difficult. This is what it's like to go through something difficult, and
Yeah.
here's how I overcome it. So there's actually
Beautiful.
a path for them, right?
Yes, and I love that question because here's the thing about parenting, right? We need to learn about parenting for these very reasons, because the child will mirror your response, yes? One of the things that are important in this specific question is to be honest. You don't have to hide to the child that you're going through a struggle. yes?
Authenticity.
Exactly. Just be honest with that. There again comes the very thing you said at the beginning. It comes through age appropriateness. You do not share with the child of 3 years old your career problems or your financial problems, right? Or a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, because they will not understand. They simply don't have that cognitive capacity to understand. And you shouldn't do that with them because they're not your therapist, neither they can't protect you, you see. They're too small.
Yeah.
So you gotta, first advice for me is be age appropriate. You use age appropriateness when you disclose things that are uncomfortable, the struggles of life. Use age appropriateness, that's number one. Be honest, yes. When you are not feeling well, you tell the child, you know what, mommy is feeling sad today. And you know what, it's okay to feel sad. There is nothing ashamed to be sad. And mommy's just gonna sit here and feel sad for a bit. But you know what? After some time, if you give me time, I can come back to you and we continue to do what you're doing. So at that very moment, you are teaching two things to the child: honesty, and you are also telling the child that it's okay to feel your emotions.
Yeah.
It's okay to be sad sometimes. And if you lose it at times when you are angry, again, you're human as a parent. Don't be so hard on you.
And I guess in some way, you're telling them that, and then they're also seeing you regulate your own emotions.
Exactly.
So in that process, it's two birds, one stone, really, right?
Exactly. So showing emotions is the very natural thing that we humans must do. Emotions are not bad. Sometimes I hear from people like, oh, I'm having this horrible, or I'm such an evil person because I'm feeling so jealous, or I'm angry, or I'm enraged. But those are emotions. There is nothing wrong with feeling those. But when you are in the exposure to the child, be honest with yourself, be honest with the child, and maybe when you are in anger, it's best not to interact with the child and say, you know what, mommy's angry right now, and I shouted, and yes, it's okay, but I'm gonna stop for a moment. I'm sorry if I said that. You can also repair. Yes, you can also repair. So that honesty and the taking ownership of your emotions and, like you said, self-regulate and repair, it's okay. Nothing wrong with that. And then taking the responsibility to work on yourself as a parent is you then making something about it. Maybe you need to exercise more. Maybe you are neglecting your self-care. Maybe you are taking too much at work and you are not able to say no. You are overdoing, and this is causing your frustration to arise.
And then you come home and think about how you can improve the child.
Yes, exactly. And then what are you teaching the child? Again, what are you teaching? That when you cannot say no, the child will also have no boundaries.
Yeah.
The child will learn that, oh, my mommy is the, Maria Teresa of Calcutta, and she's always taking the pain of others. She can. No, that's unreal. I don't want to give that legacy to my child. I want them to be able to say no. But again, like we say in the beginning, I'm only going to teach that to my child when I mirror that to him, when I am doing that.
Starts with you. So myth busted. Myth number one.
So myth number one is not about the child, it's about the parent. Yeah. So myth number two, so a successful child is ahead of the curve. A successful child is ahead of the curve. So there is, and it also, I would say, now that I'm living in Dubai for 25 years, it's very cultural sometimes that some parents are more driven to let the child be successful, to achieve, lot of focus on academic, there is a lot of that in certain cultures where they feel that if the child is not ahead of the curve, they are going to fail.
Yeah.
Yes, so they push too much. This is where the authenticity is touched, because the child came with its own genetic, blueprint. It comes from the environment as well, that he or she will form their authentic self. And if you push that too much, now you are stressing the child with your own fears. So if you want success, first you need to define what is success within you as a parent. Is it money? Is it financials? Is it a title? What is it that you perceive as success? And then ask the question, would that be my child's? Would he be happy with that? So a successful child doesn't necessarily mean that he or she has to thrive in academics.
Yeah.
Or maybe in sports. Some parents, like football players or rugby players, I'm pretty sure when they have boys, the first thing that it will come in their mind is, oh, I want my boy to do what I do.
Yeah.
Yes, and so they will project that into the child.
It's so funny. I see that so often.
Yes, right?
It's
but
so true.
At times this is not. Maybe that child is meant to be an artist.
Yeah.
Maybe that child is meant to be, I don't know, he might like something else.
This is one of the ways in which I feel like working with kids for the last 15 years before I had my own kids really benefited me, right? Because when I started to have kids, I don't think I pushed them towards anything at all. I encouraged them to try new things, and both of them tried martial arts. My son's still doing it, but my daughter was like, no, I don't want to do it. I want to do coloring in or drawing, or she's so creative. That was what she wanted to do, and the physical side of martial arts she didn't enjoy as much. And so anyone who, my wife and I both teach martial arts for almost 20 years, it's like anyone who had gone through that would probably want their kids to do something similar and seen the
Yeah.
benefits of it all with so many children.
Yeah.
But I think that was a lesson I learned early on, watching a lot of parents who had done martial arts or done other sports, push their
Yeah.
kids into things and really
Yeah.
try and get that round peg in the square hole. And
Oh yes.
it just doesn't
yes.
work.
It doesn't
you know,
work. I
and
did it. I did that mistake. If
They'll
I have
resent
to
you.
be honest, yes, I put my eldest son to play guitar, for
Okay.
example. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Somewhere in my fantasy, I
Yeah.
saw my son playing guitar. He wasn't interested on that. I remember sending him to Wafi Mall all the way from Jumeirah, and he going to these classes where he actually hated.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was me. It was me the one that wanted to play guitar, most probably. Same thing with tennis. I put him to tennis classes.
We have our ideas of what they'll become.
Yes,
And I think
we have the dreams.
so much of what you're saying today, for me, it feels like at the core of most of the issues is expectations
Yes,
of ourselves, of our kids, of our
Yes.
parents, of other people.
yes,
And often I think, life is just this process of learning to let go.
yes.
And a big part of that is learning to let go of expectations that we
Yeah.
feel have been placed on us,
Yeah,
that we're placing on other people, including
Yeah.
our kids.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great example, right?
Absolutely.
Letting go of the expectation that they want to do something
Yes.
which you were passionate about or you wanted to do yourself.
Exactly, because that concept of success, and that was the second myth, is just in your head as
Yeah.
a parent. You see success in certain ways. Don't project that into your child.
We all measure success in a different way.
Totally. The child, it came already with wholeness. The
Yeah.
child is divine. It just needs you as a parent to give that safety, protection, and space and time for him or her to show you who they really are.
Yeah, there is no
Yes.
curve. Who,
There-
who created the curve?
Exactly.
These curves are, fantasies based on different ways of measuring success, right?
Totally.
Myth busted.
So myth number 3, listen carefully. So there are good and bad children. Yes, believe it or not, there are parents who believe, and sometimes they will even say, oh, my child it's a naughty child, it's a bad child, it's a good child.
Oh, this really is the worst one for me, I think.
Exactly.
I've seen the power of words, especially from parents, so
Who defines that? Who defines or put the standards of what's bad and what's good? Like who? You know what I mean? So this is another myth that we must let go, because what happens is we have this perception that the good child is the submissive child, is the child that listens to you, do whatever you say, and then suddenly they get that sticker or label, oh, he's a good child.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, what about the quote-unquote bad child? Actually, the bad child is the authentic child. The child that is fighting to be himself or herself. Isn't that true?
that's so funny. Yeah, it's so true.
This is the gifted child, because it's questioning you as
Yeah,
a
yeah,
parent. It's
yeah,
saying no.
Yeah.
It's saying no. It's a strong child.
Do you know what's really interesting? A lot of the time I feel like we're creating this generation of people pleasers because
Yeah.
we're teaching our
Yeah.
kids to be agreeable.
Yes.
We're teaching our kids that, to be well behaved is not to speak up for themselves.
Yes.
To be well behaved is
Thank
to
you
do
for saying
exactly as
that.
they're told,
Yes.
right? And so
Yes.
our job at the Warrior Academy is, we focus on the 3 C's: confidence, conduct, concentration. And one of those C's is conduct, which is behavior. And a lot of people are quite surprised when they speak to me about behavior and improving behavior, because I've got this approach where I really want to find that balance between encouraging them to find self-discipline and not being incredibly disruptive within society that it causes a problem, but also not dimming their light of freedom and creativity and
Yes.
passion. And isn't it funny how when you look at some of the most successful people in today's world, whether they were sports people or entrepreneurs or business people or whatever, actors or whatever it is, right? They were probably some of the most disruptive people growing up.
Totally.
And now within the corporate world, for instance, we're seeking disruption. We want disruptive people because they're the ones who come up with the unique ideas.
Yep.
And so, people pride themselves on how disruptive they can be with their thinking.
Yep.
But then when they're kids, we really punish disruption.
Yep.
And so it's an interesting journey for me as a parent, because we want to find that balance of improving behavior and self-discipline, which is so important.
Totally.
To have that ability to apply yourself and have self-discipline and improve your behavior in certain things is so important, but also not dimming that light. and not removing this disruptive energy, which is so powerful.
Yes, it's all about that authenticity, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm sure you're going to agree with me that we are not our behaviors.
Yeah.
We are not. Behaviors are things we do. We are beyond doing, because if we are not doing, then who are we, right? So we are not our behaviors. And these bad children, good children, is such a myth. You know, it's such a myth. I always tell this to the parents that I coach. Your naughty child, the so-called naughty child, the child that is challenging you, triggering you, that's your gifted child. That's the child that came into this world to teach about you, so that you can mirror your own triggers and ask the question, what is it that when he does this, it makes me so mad? And I promise you, if you ask that question, you're going to have a lot of answers within you that has to do with you and nothing to do with the child.
It's so true, yeah. And you know, when a lot of the young people we've taught, and it's typically a lot of boys, I find, they're very physical, and they learn through physicality, and the things they do tends to be quite physical when they're growing up. They're labeled as disruptive very early on, and they're typically called bad. My son is badly behaved. And so we've got a lot of kids who come to the Warrior Academy with ADHD, and they've been in this one-size-fits-all school system, industrial era template, and their behavior, which is seen as disruptive because they struggle to sit down for 6 hours a day and study at a desk, is seen as disruptive, although it's very hard for them to kind of focus in that environment.
Yes.
And so they're told, because they're disruptive, they are badly behaved. And so they're told they are naughty, they are badly behaved. And they're told by the teachers, you've been badly behaved, you are naughty. They go home and they're told the same thing. And then they come to us 5 years later. 5 years of this language training them that they are badly behaved and they're disruptive and they're naughty. And so what happens? They become that. It's like if you tell a 5-year-old they're naughty for 5 years, they will live up to that. Totally. And so what we always say in the Warrior Academy to parents is, your words literally paint a picture of what your child will become. Yes. And for me, that's such a powerful concept. And I try to be, as a parent, so acutely aware of the words I use. Because I know that they have such a power behind them. You know, when you've got young kids, you'll say, good boy or good girl, and it's just afterwards you kind of cringe because you realize this stuff. You're like, that wasn't the right thing to say. Yeah. And so it's just bringing yourself back and having awareness, or naughty this or naughty that. It's just like, I've seen this play out 5 to 10 years down the line, and I know what to do. And I think as parents, it's easy to slip up when it comes to language. Yes. And I think it's, like I said before, just reminding yourself, whatever you say to them, they will grow into. So you can label the behavior, you can label the action, but not the child. Totally. That action was naughty. That action was, you showed bad behavior then, but you're not naughty. Yeah. I know that you're not like that. I know that's not you. Yes. Right? Yes. And this is interconnected as well to what they will become also in terms of personality traits and attachment styles. Because if you keep saying this to a child, you are naughty, and then you withdraw love from the child, you send them to the room and you say, you are such a bad kid, go to your room. You know what you're doing right there? You are sending one message. When you behave wrong, I don't love you. I don't want you around me. So go to your room. So I withdraw my attention and my love from you. So that sends that message to the child, okay, I'm only accepted when I submit to the needs and, to the wants of my mom or dad, or when I follow the rules of the teacher or the society. So then, like you say, we are creating a society of people pleasers, because the only way that we get attention then is by doing what the other people ask you to do. That's how you get attention. Totally. And that's a really good example as well, the sending to the room. I think that a lot of parents send their kids to the room when they're being really disruptive. Yeah. Not because the parent can't deal with it. Exactly. It's like, I can't deal with you like this right now. So actually, really, who needs to go to the room is the parent. It's like you're better off sending yourself to the room. Totally. Oh, I love that. I love that. One of the things I mean, when my daughter was younger and she'd be really disruptive or do something really bad, we would send her to her room. And, later on, as you evolve as a parent, and I said, you kind of get better as you go. It kind of
Yeah.
feels that way, at least.
Yeah.
With my son now, I'll send him to his room, but I'll go there and sit with him.
Yeah.
And so I'm there sitting in the room. It could be 10 minutes, it could be 20 minutes.
Yeah.
We work on our breathing. He'll calm down. We'll talk about what happened.
Yeah.
And then we'll walk downstairs together.
Yeah.
Because sometimes your kids need to be separated. Like
Yes.
it's World War
Yes.
III in the living room otherwise, right? I'm
Tell me
trying to
about
stop
it.
someone ending up in A&E.
Yes, yes.
And, you know, they're picking up weapons and it's all sorts. You've got to
Yes.
separate them.
Totally.
And so for me, it's a case of not giving them that isolation,
Mm-hmm.
but actually being there with them so they can learn how to regulate their
Yes.
emotions in that moment.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
just such a small difference.
Yes.
You don't need to stop sending them to their room, but you've got to be there with them. That's the way I see it.
Yes, that's much better, because then the message that you are sending is, I see that you are behaving wrong. This is not right. And then you teach this method of cause and effect.
Yeah.
Yes, cause and effect. You did this, and the consequence of this is this now, you know? And so you teach the child, but you know what? I'm going to be here with you. Yes, because you are worth it of my presence.
Yeah.
The moment you withdraw the attention and love from the child, they only get one message and one message only. You are not worth it of love if you don't behave the way I want you to behave.
Yeah.
And that is horrible. That's a trauma. You see, if we talk about psychology, that's the trauma. Trauma is not necessarily a dramatic event. It's not necessarily a beating up or a tsunami.
Could
or
be the
you know,
absence of something.
Exactly. So trauma is what happens in my head out of an event that happened to me. So if my parents send me to the room constantly and they say that I'm naughty and I'm bad and this and that, the belief that I make in my head is that I'm not worth it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a bad person.
I think one of the ways of looking at it as well is in the moments that your children are acting up the most, one of the biggest mistakes I see parents make, and we've all been there and done it, is to detach themselves and create separation. When
Yeah.
really it's in that precise moment
That they
you need to
you.
double down on your presence.
Yes.
That's when they need you the most.
Yes.
Because if a child overreacts about something or
Yes.
is upset about something, it's because
Yes.
they're not able to regulate themselves in that moment. The person to teach them that is you. And so that's where your presence needs to come in.
Yes, thank you for saying that, because that, to the audience, I want to say something about angry children, yes? Especially this misunderstanding with ADHD from the condition that I will also like to say something, but for children that are angry, sometimes there are many children that are angry. Beneath that anger or the behavior of anger, there is always pain. There is a need that is not being fulfilled.
Yeah.
The child is expressing the emotion of anger because they don't have the capacity, the cognitive capacity to express to the parent what's going on inside.
They can't articulate their emotions,
They
yeah.
can't. So they express it through what they know, what their body knows, which is emotions. Because again, if we look into biology, is the right hemisphere of the brain that is the first developed in humans. So the right side of the brain is emotions. And the left side of the brain, the cognitive, logical, rational, you know, part of the brain, it only develops until the end of 25, like
Yeah.
mid-20s. So can you imagine? You are basically when parents do the naughty, good, bad child, they are judging unfairly because, and even with the labels, it's so unfair because they don't have that capacity to really rationalize what you as an adult, you yourself as a parent, you are doing the wrong decision. And there, where was your rationale on that? You know what I mean? So that is one aspect of good and bad. And the other thing about ADHD and children with ADHD is that ADHD is an epigenetic condition. Yes, epi means above the gene. It's an epigenetic condition, which means that when children are exposed to a lot of pressure, to a lot of what they perceive danger, maybe they are nervous that they are not coping with the task because their brain has different way to cope with this stress, and some of them are hyper and some of them are intro. There are, you know, two types of ADHD, or three types, yes? The hyper and the ones that withdraw, disassociate, and sometimes the combination of the two. But the gene in itself is absolutely, a child with ADHD has the same gene of a child without ADHD. The difference is the response of the ADHD child into stress, stressful situations, perception of danger, they will have hyperactivity because that's how the brain is protecting them, with activity. So they get distracted and they are not in the internal pain, the emotional pain, or they will withdraw, disassociate. That's the only difference, you see. So what I'm trying to say is that if the environment is of parents that are loving, connected, or teachers that are understanding that they're not doing this in purpose, it's part of how their brain, they're not neurotypical, their brain respond different to stress in ADHD. So they're really not doing it purposely. So one of the tips I suggest for kids with ADHD is to buy them fidgeting toys, Sometimes this fidgeting helps them to regulate while they are focusing on a task,
Yeah.
So there is now even food has to do with children with ADHD. There is so much resources now, thank God, that we are discovering more and more how to help an ADHD brain to cope with the stress, to cope with perceptions of danger, pressure, all the pressure of peers. So there is a lot of material out there in the social media.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really something that parents should be studying.
Yeah. Yeah. So
and myth busted then.
Good. So myth number 4, good parents are natural. So basically parenting comes naturally. What a cliche, I must say. If someone tells me this now, I don't know what I mean, maybe punch them on the face because certainly it didn't come natural to me. That much I can tell you, And I am a very nice, loving human being, but yet parenting slapped me on the face because it's difficult.
Think elements of parenting come naturally? Like some people are more likely to quickly embody nurturing qualities than others. Do you know what I mean? So, like probably elements of parenting come naturally.
Yes. Well, yes, we are instinctively, protective to our beloved ones. Yeah, that's instinctively, right? We will go instinctively to protect our cubs, right? But I don't think parenting comes natural. We need to learn. We need to learn, as we are sharing now a lot of facts of psychology, we need to learn how to be the role models to our children, right? Love, again, that comes naturally, is instinctive. But even in that word love is an overrated word. Love means different things for different people. At times, if you don't understand love in a conscious way, you could call yourself a loving parent and yet be so enmeshed and a helicopter parent that wants to do everything for the child and call it love. And it's not necessarily love. Or you could be this very strict authoritarian parent that at times uses violence. I don't know in your time, but in my time, they used to whip us, if we will come with bad grades from school, And trust me, I didn't feel love when I was beaten up, because I couldn't cope with the math. I hated math. And yet my mother thought she was loving me because she was trying to teach me something, I guess, right? But it didn't help me. I was actually more scared. I was more insecure, to who I was, and I wasn't fulfilling what my mother wanted to achieve with me in the school.
I hear a lot of people, online, and they're still hitting their kids, spanking their kids, corporal punishment at home, all this sort of stuff. And I'm completely against it. I think there's absolutely no benefit there. I think that for a lot of parents, they're doing it reactively, and it's because they can't deal with the emotion, or they are copying what they learned to deal with discipline when they're growing up.
Thank you.
And what you said then about love is interesting, because a lot of the people who do it would say, well, I'm not doing it reactively, I'm doing it because I love my child and I don't want them to behave that way. But love is, from my perspective, both a given thing and a received thing. And so for it to actually work, it's essentially got to be received in the same way. Totally. And I don't think a child feels loved, like you said, when they're being hit, right?
No, absolutely no. I mean, my mother will sometimes spank me because I was late at home because I was playing volleyball. And yes, it was a dangerous neighborhood. My mother genuinely was scared about me. She did love me. Here, the question is not the love that she felt for me, but the way she showed me her love by spanking me when I came from playing volleyball was out of her own fear. Yeah. She was scared for me, and alternatives would have been, you are scared for me, go and get me there and take me from the, playground and say, my love, it's time to go, let's go. But what happens is, because we do not prepare parenting the way we should, we improvise parenting, or we are not having enough resources. So parents have children at times now when they shouldn't have, because if they are working 24/7, why are you bringing children? Let's talk about this. Let's talk about the pink elephant in the room.
What's so important? What's more important?
Yes, I mean, if you are career oriented and if you want to do everything, you need to know that parenting needs time. It requires you to be present in the parenting experience.
Here's a controversial question for you then.
Yeah.
A lot of people today really encourage women in particular who have to give birth to children that they can have it all at the same time. You can be the world's best mum and you can be high-flying boss lady entrepreneur. Is that realistic or is that unrealistic? Are we painting an unrealistic picture there?
Yeah, so in my humble opinion, that's so unrealistic. And take it from me, I have 3 boys, I have 2 degrees, I have a full-time job. It is unrealistic because let me show you nature, okay? I'm gonna give you an example with nature because animals tend to know better sometimes than us humans, okay? Let me give you this example of a lioness. The lioness, when the lioness has cubs, the cubs are protected and they go to a hole when mom is absent, when the lioness is going there for hunting. And then when the lioness comes again to where the cubs are and brings the food, then the cubs comes out, they eat with the mom, and then they play. They play around her, yes, because they know that they are safe in the presence of a mother, yes? And in the playing, they are learning the skills that they need to survive. So with the paws, they go into trees, and they are fighting between, all the cubs, and so they are learning in the play with the presence of a loving mother. We are not different than animals, We also, as humans, we need the presence of a mother, a loving, nourishing parent. Could be mother, could be father, not necessarily mother. I have met beautiful, amazing fathers who does the work of the mother. So the mother goes out there and the father stays and they take care of the kids and they play with the kids. We need that. In parenting, it is required the presence of a loving parent, whether it's one, bonus if there is 2. Because the child needs that presence to know one thing and one thing only, that mom is here with me. That means I must be so worth it for her.
Yeah.
I must be so important to her or him, my father.
So I guess the side myth on that is you can have it all, just not at the same time.
Yes, yes. And the child needs your time. So
Yeah.
if you don't have and you don't make that required time for the child, then you might examine really what is it that you want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Having a child shouldn't be, and I know I'm using that word shouldn't when I don't like, because I'm not attached to anything, but we shouldn't have a child just because society says that, just because my parents want a grandchild, just because I'm getting old and the clock is ticking. Yes,
That's not a good enough reason
no,
to put yourself through that.
No. You really want to be a mother because you are now emotionally mature to be able to handle and prioritize the things that are important for you.
How do you know when you are ready to be a parent?
When you know that you can give the time, that parenting, such a sacred journey. You see, we were talking about this in the whole podcast. You are the role model of that child. Your behaviors as a parent are going to shape the personality of that child.
Yeah.
Now, you know when you are ready, when you know that you have that, capacity to be tolerant, patient, and that you can sometimes give up on your gym, on your yoga class, or on your meeting, because the child at times might require your presence. Because children are unpredictable. That's the beauty of it, It's
an interesting one, isn't it? When you're willing to sacrifice your selfish life.
Yeah.
It's a good indication that you're ready to be a parent, right?
Totally.
I think that's the first thing that shocks people when they first have a newborn and they're like, I used to have 8 hours sleep. Now I've got to get up every hour, every 2 hours or whatever. And that's the first freedom that goes. I think for a lot of people, they feel like it goes. And I remember having a conversation with my dad and we disagreed on this. I said to him, parenting is about sacrifice. And he said, no, it's not. And he said, I've never sacrificed anything for you. And I said, well, that doesn't make sense to me. And he said, well, because it didn't feel like a sacrifice to me. I felt like I wanted to do it. Everything I did was because I wanted to do it. Anyway, we argued about that.
I love your dad already. I love what he said, but
devil's advocate, I think.
Yeah, it's so good because see, that's emotional maturity. That is when you know you are ready to have children because you are detached to other things, and what you're doing it graciously. You are doing it voluntarily. It's not a sacrifice.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like, oh my God, I have to do this for. Actually, I was interviewing Dubai Radio once, and the slogan of the interview was, Luz, a conscious parenting coach, he says that parenting is a selfish act.
Yeah.
Yes, that was can you
I love
imagine
that.
how
I
many
love that.
calls that day? The Helen Farmers, she's like, oh my God, so many calls. And of course they're all attacking, my slogan, right? Luz says this, she of course she maybe doesn't have children. It's so sacrificing. We need to take them to school and blah blah blah. But then when I said this, parenting is not a selfless act. It's very selfish because when you have children, who decides to have children? Who wants the children?
Yeah.
Us, the parents. We
And
want
who
them.
has the opportunity to evolve as a person through the process?
They are the vessel of your evolution, you see, if you take that opportunity.
But I think from a very, if you look at it, that word sacrifice, right? Like it's still a word, and you're giving up something for something else, and so it's semantics really to a degree, right? Because there's still give and take for everything you do. Yeah, you're sacrificing. Like I go to the gym, I want to stay in shape, so I go to the gym. I'm sacrificing my time, but I'm doing it completely willingly, and I love going there.
Exactly.
But I'm still taking something away from my life to give to this thing.
Yes.
And so
that's when you know you are ready. Are you willing to do that? Ask yourself this question, because you just give a hint here.
Yeah.
When you are ready to give that willingly and happily, you are ready to have a child.
It should feel like a frictionless decision.
Absolutely. Yes.
Brilliant. I
so
love that.
parenting is not selfless.
Parenting is not selfless.
Don't buy on that myth.
Okay.
It's selfish because we want the child. We want to experience parenting.
Yeah.
Fathers wants to be fathers, and mothers wants to experience being a mother. So it is you are bringing the
choosing.
children. Yeah, the ex and are not telling you, take me out, I want to be a child. No, you want it, you bring them. So you need to be emotionally mature to bring them into this world.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Brilliant.
That
I
was
love
already,
that one. It's
that
a good
was
one.
already another
That's a
myth.
controversial one. I like that one.
It is.
Parenting is a selfish act.
It's a selfish act, indeed. So another myth.
Is this the sixth myth?
We did 4, 5.
This
now
is sixth.
this is the 6th.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So a good parent is a loving one. So everything is about love. Like if you love the child, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Yes. And here's what we were discussing before. Love is not enough to be a parent. Because love, if it's not conscious, like you said something really eloquent, which is very much what I wanted to say in this myth. Love is a sender and a receiver. If you tell me you are loving me, I need to feel the love. The receiver has to taste that love feel it nicely with a good heart.
Yeah.
But if you tell me you love me, but yet you pressure me to do things that I don't want to as a child, that you force me to do the things like me sending my eldest son to play guitar when he doesn't want to, and I'm thinking myself, my goodness me, the sacrifice I do to pay that guitar lesson, I love you, that's why
I'm doing this because I love you, come on.
Like really, or when you are spanking the child and hitting them and saying, because I care about you, I don't want you to do this and that.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling your love.
The love you think you're sending isn't being received.
Totally.
So the actual connection's not made.
Yes.
It's interesting as well for me because one thing we haven't talked about, or we did touch on slightly, is that overprotection side. But there's also over-loving, right? It's like you can suffocate your child with love.
Yes.
And what I've noticed, and maybe you'll be able to explain this for me, but when I've seen growing up, the kids, you can kind of see how they're raised as you kind of grow up and you get older. The ones who were overwhelmed with almost like a suffocation of love from their parents, or one parent in particular, or both, they almost seemed like they became very spoiled. And as they got older, they then became incredibly disruptive and were rejecting that love. It was almost like they were running away from it because it felt so heavy.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I often feel like the parents who give so much love, the suffocation of love, is probably because they didn't feel it themselves. And by giving it
They're
to that child,
overcompensating.
right? I think sometimes when you, let's say you're raising a 5-year-old child, you're actually raising yourself at 5 years old. And if you didn't feel love when you were 5, you're basically saying to yourself, I didn't feel it, therefore I'm giving it.
Yeah.
And you can overcompensate. And
Yeah.
in doing so, you can suffocate your child with love.
Totally. And what you're describing is basically you trying to compensate to your inner child. Yes, you are projecting your own inner child into your child, the external child.
What's
right?
the impact of that? And do you think there's any
It's
correlation
terrible.
between...
I'll tell you what's the impact, and this is very controversial, by the way. It's very powerful. The impact on you overprotecting your child, being enmeshed with the parenting experience. It's almost like you are living through the child. You are taking their identity. You are living through them.
Wow.
Not only that, you are taking them their autonomy, the capacity to make decisions by themselves. You are removing that very, very important skill that they need to develop in their childhood by letting them be who they are. But if you are a helicopter parent, you are taking away that survival skill they need.
I love what you said there.
Yes.
Because the more you push in one direction, the more you lose the other. And if you overprotect in your mind as a parent, and,
Yes.
you know, I've seen this with a lot of mums that I've spoken to. You
Yes.
see it online in the comments and everything. We need to protect them. There's this huge protective energy, which is great. It's a nurturing energy, but with overprotection, you protect them in the short term.
Yes.
But you do them a massive disservice
Oh my
later on
God,
in life. And
yes.
so the reality is you actually lower their resilience the more you protect them. And I
Yes.
think people aren't aware of that.
And I'll tell you even more. There is another element more controversial than this. When you are too enmeshed to a child or overprotective, also you remove the capacity to bear pain, discomfort.
For them to bear
For
pain.
them to bear pain, to go through the discomfort of life. And when you do that, when you grow as an adult, when there is discomfort, when there is, emotional challenges, when life happens, basically, you don't want to feel it. So you numb yourself through addictive behaviors.
Wow.
That could be food, binging food, that could be cigarettes, that could be alcohol, that could be drugs, because you don't want to feel the emotional pain of the discomfort of life.
The two children I was talking about who were overloved by one or both parents,
Yeah.
they went on to become drug addicts.
You see? You see what I mean? So this is extremely important.
Mind-blowing, isn't
Yes,
it? And it's
yes.
the conversation no one wants to have. Something we
Yes.
say in the Warrior Academy is if you overprotect your child, adult life hits them with full force.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, boom, there's adult life. And they're not ready for it.
I had my sister-in-law in the States. I went to the States and I was watching her with the child, right? And she was so overprotective that she would, and she was so in her head as a parent that she didn't want her child to get dirty. Yeah, so she teach the child very early that dirt was bad.
Right.
So the child would not even go to play outside. And one day we were playing in the snow. It was in winter in Detroit. And the poor child, can you imagine when we were playing in the snow and then when he was going to fall down, he didn't put his hand so that he could fall and in his hand because he was scared to
No
make his
way,
hand.
wow.
So he fell on his face. This is how conditioned he was
Wow.
to not get himself dirty. This is what an overprotective parenting style can
It's
do.
actually a really good metaphor for
Yes.
any type of overprotection.
Yes,
right?
yes.
They won't learn to use
They
their hands.
won't learn
They
to
won't
use
learn, well,
their
actually,
hands.
they won't learn to protect themselves.
Exactly. So that is how bad is overprotection. So please do not love your children too much. That would be my advice. Don't love your children too much to the
Yeah.
point that you take their beingness, Don't.
Yeah.
Just love them, moderately, what is necessary. Parenting is
Love
not
them
about the
secretly.
love. Parenting is not about the love. It's about you giving conscious love,
Yeah.
coherent love, balanced love. Yeah?
Yeah. Brilliant.
So-
Brilliant myth. I love that one.
Last but not least, parents needs to be in control. What a cliche.
We're never in control.
Exactly. Parents needs to be in
we can
control.
think we are for a moment, but
It's the illusion that we have of being controlled. We don't control anything, and
No.
certainly not our children. And I can give you example of this, and it happens everywhere. But this, I think, is the most interesting example. Have you noticed when you are in the plane, and in the plane you hear the scream of a child in somewhere on the seat there, and most of us naturally or instinctively we look at like which child is crying, right? And sometimes you'll see two kinds of parents. One parent that is freaking out and anxious, like, shh, don't cry, you know, what people will think of me, you know, that I'm not a good parent, I'm not in control of my child. You have these parents, or the other type of parents that they don't care, you know, they're absolutely okay with the child to cry. That's fine, they're a child. So it's meant for them to cry, maybe their pressure, whatever. So here is the perception that some parents have. I need to be in control of my children, right?
Yeah.
No, you don't. Says who? You know, children are so spontaneous. They are meant to be playful, creative. You know, they are meant to disrupt, like you say. You know, that's their authenticity. They are exploring, they are learning. You cannot be in control of the children. You can be in control of anything. It's an illusion if you feel you can be in control. Maybe what I suggest for parents is to, again, you know, work on yourself, learn to bear the embarrassment of a child crying or your child crying. It's okay. We all cry. He or she doesn't show any of, he or she will only show their discomfort through emotions. So if they have to cry, they let them cry.
What's the impact of that on the child? Like if you're a parent and you're in that situation on a plane where people are looking around, your child's making a noise, and you're being really strict with them to try and keep them quiet.
Yeah.
What's the impact on the child long term?
Well, the child will think like, okay, I cannot be me. People will judge me. So they will start to create that fear of judgment. Yes, they will have that imprinted that I have to be always, you know, in my best and comply to everybody. Everybody's feelings is more important than mine. You know, I cannot feel my feelings because what would people think of me? So there again, we are already creating fear of judgment.
Yeah.
Yes, people pleasers, over empathetic. So you put other people's feelings above your own.
Yeah.
So
I think that's such a brilliant myth. I love that one.
Yeah.
I think there are so many things. I'm listening to this and I'm like, oh, I'm at fault for this and that, and, you know, and just being transparent. There's so many things. I think as a parent, if you're honest with yourself, it's like I could improve that. I could do that better. Just to conclude and to finish off this amazing conversation, what words of reassurance would you give a parent who feels a little bit overwhelmed by the amount of mistakes they've just picked up on?
So the most important recipe for a parent to be the best version of themselves with their kids is to have compassion to yourself as a parent. Practice compassion to your own flaws, compassion that you can never be in control. It's an illusion. Let go. Compassion that you're never going to be perfect. That's okay. That's okay. Have compassion, because the more you have compassion to you as a parent, the more they are going to come out of you to your children. The more compassion is going to come to your children. I have a beautiful metaphor from Dr. Wayne Dyer, and if I can leave you with that, I think it sums everything we spoke today. So if I have an orange, and it's not a tricky question, okay? If I have an orange and I cut the orange and I squeeze the orange, what comes out?
Orange juice.
Exactly. So let's say one day I'm outside and somebody screams at me something nasty in the driveway, in the highway, something. And I'm really angry. I'm angry. Inside of me, there is so much anger. So again, I take an orange, I cut the orange, and I squeeze. What comes out?
Orange juice.
Exactly. There cannot be angry orange juice, is it? Because
No.
the orange has only orange juice. Can I get banana juice from it? No. Can I get apple juice from an orange? No. So you see, we are the same humans. What comes out from me to the people outside of me is what I have inside. So as a parent, what do you want to have inside? Who nurtures that? Who puts what you want to keep inside? If you want to have patience, tolerance, love, compassion, guess what? When your children are going to pressure you, when they are going to be, mommy, 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 what will come outside of you if you are embracing that for you first. Love, compassion, forgiveness to making mistakes. Well, they are going to take that from you. The moment they pressure you, the moment they put you in difficult situations, if you are doing the work within yourself, you will only give what you have inside. So you will give that. But if you don't do the work in yourself, take care of yourself, self-care as a parent, what will come out from you when children or your boss or your friends, whoever, the guy in the road, and they pressure you a little bit, if you have resentment, well, resentment will come out. If you have, criticism, well, criticism. If you have guilt, guilt will come, or hatred or disappointment. Wherever you have inside, that's what we give to the people outside of us. So be careful for all the parents. Take care of yourselves. Be compassionate. Do the work of self-care, forgiveness, awareness. You use that word a lot on the podcast. Certainly, awareness is the very first step to healing. Yeah. So, there you go.
I think that's a brilliant way to end. Be aware of where you can improve and do the work, but be kind to yourself.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining.
No, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
I really hope you enjoyed today's Warrior Academy podcast episode. We're going to keep creating these episodes because I know that so many parents find them useful or get insights or get ideas about how to develop their child's character. But it all comes down to the 3 C's: confidence, conduct, and concentration. So if you want to get a deep insight into the levels of confidence your child has, the level of concentration they have, or the level of conduct they have, so that you can actually put a score next to it and then work towards increasing those scores like we do in the Warrior Academy, then I'd love to invite you to fill in the Breakthrough Area Assessment. It takes about 5 minutes of your time, and you will get a personalized PDF report on your child's 3 C's. To access the Breakthrough Area Assessment and find out your child's 3 C's score, all you need to do is go to www.breakthrougharea.com.